So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about LaSalle, and obviously their hire with Dunphy. It came a little late, but obviously huge news for LaSalle. Can you talk to me a little bit about obviously the hire, what it means to LaSalle, but also just to the greater Philadelphia area? Obviously, he's an icon there, and this is his third team in that area.
Yeah, I mean, Fran Dunphy and Philadelphia basketball go back literally 60 years, from his days at Malvern Prep to playing at LaSalle and then coaching in the region. And he's the only person ever to have coached at two Big Five schools with his long run at Penn and then going over to Temple. Now he's going to be coaching at three of them. And I think the general consensus, well, if there's anybody who's going to coach at three Big Five schools, of course it's going to be Fran Dunphy. And I think Mike Jensen first reported when the job opened because there was that reaction like, who's it going to be? Because it's a really tough job, and I assume we're going to get into that. But it's not an easy place to win, and there's a couple coaches that have Philadelphia ties, like a Matt Langle, that are in really good positions where you're like, I don't know that they would want to make the jump from the comfy spot that they're in, winning, to a school at a position that's really difficult to win. And then when Mike Jensen from the Inquirer reports, all right, they're talking to Fran Dunphy, the more you thought about it, you're like, all right, he's 73, but if he really wants this, there really isn't going to be anybody better. They haven't had a notable alumnus in the last 10 or 15 years who's like a hot up-and-coming, head coach that you could say like, oh, it's that guy who's going to come back to their former program. I mean, I know like Ty Garland is just starting to get into coaching on the high school level, but, that's a long ways away from college head coach at the Atlantic 10 conference. So, there are very few guys that are really going to be able to rally the type of support that LaSalle needs, because let's be honest, and Mike Sealski wrote a great column about it also in the Inquirer this week, LaSalle needs a lot of help.
Yeah. I mean, and, I know, you touched on it, but the difficulty of that job, obviously you're in Philadelphia. You have so many prominent schools, you have a fellow St. Joe's in the Atlantic 10, obviously Temple, Villanova, Penn. How difficult has that job become with recruits, to get especially those Philadelphia guys into the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think, recruiting now is so difficult to begin with because, momentum can be gained and lost in the course of one season, and everybody wants to win now. And it's really difficult to sell people on, hey, come here for 2-3 years and maybe we'll be good, unless you're, a brand new head coach at an exciting program with good facilities. But LaSalle doesn't have those facilities. So it's really difficult to get people to come in and say, hey, commit to us for 3, 4, 5 years. When with the transfer portal and everything's changing so quickly, and everybody's in, win now mode. So you've got already, 6, 7, 8 programs in the Atlantic 10 that are, much more appealing from just a winning perspective. But then you throw in, bad facilities, not a great location, another school in the same conference and the same city that has better location, better facilities, all those sorts of things, better fan support. You go to a LaSalle game, there's like several hundred people there. The band is, doesn't sound good. I mean, nothing about that really screams like, oh, come here. It's an exciting place to play.
Yeah.
And that's tough at any level in Division I, much less when you're competing against Rhode Island and Davidson and Dayton and those types of programs that are recruiting borderline high major kids.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. And not that Temple's in a great part of the city, but LaSalle's really, there's just nothing around there. It's not a bad part of town, but there's just not that much exciting about what's around the campus that's going to appeal to many college kids either. So, the school's not in great shape. It's a tough sell. And that's part of why they're bringing in Fran Dunphy. So I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but LaSalle has a $6.5 million donation made by a late alumnus that has to be used on a new basketball facility, and it has to be used by like next year. So they're kind of sitting on this money that could go away, and they need to do something with it. So I think the Dunphy push is, let's hope that he can raise us enough money to build something new, because he's 73, right? He's not going to be coaching there for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I would hope you can start to build something in 3 to 4 years, identify an associate head coach who's the coach in waiting, and with a new facility, with some energy, if that gets fans back in the building, all those types of things, okay, maybe you can resurrect the program. But otherwise, I mean, John Giannini did it in 2013, but mostly was sort of like a ragtag group of talented, but Philly guys who had started elsewhere in college and came back home. Errol Pettis started at Rutgers, and Ramon Galloway started at South Carolina. Ty Duran was local, and Jarrell Wright, those two guys he got as freshmen. But like, it was a bunch of guys that he brought in, Garland from Virginia Tech, Philly guys that came home. So, you can get away with that. But that was sort of I think people were like, oh, he's figured out the way to make LaSalle win again. And now looking back on it, it's like, oh, he captured lightning in a bottle that year. And you need more to actually have a sustainable winning program.
Yeah.
And I don't think the last 4 years were a reflection on Ashley Howard really much at all. Maybe a little bit, it's tough to tell, but it's just so difficult to win there.